Hello everybody, and the video that I'm doing today is a YouTube exclusive video. I haven't done this in a while, but I just did a coaching session with Grixis Shadow, and the match that I had the pleasure to play with was a Grixis Shadow mirror match on the MTGO leagues, and that match was just really sweet. I feel like the Death Shadow Mirror match has a lot of angles to cover that actually ended up happening on the video. So I want to just go through it on the Magic Online replays and kind of explain a little bit there. While we're at it though, let's do a little deck for this deck because I always love to do that. This is a pretty stock version of Grixis Shadow. The only difference is that I'm playing 4 Lightning Bolts. And some lists play 4 Unholy Heat, 2 Fatal Push, 0 Lightning Bolt. I am a firm believer the Lightning Bolt is a very good magic card in any aggressive decks with the Dragon's Rage Channeler, Ragavan, and etc. In this deck you even have the corner case scenario to bolt yourself to grow 2 or 3 shadows. But yeah, I really like Lightning Bolt and I am not playing less than 4. The rest of the list is pretty straightforward. The only thing is that we play 3 Drown in the Loch, 1 Spell Pierce, and not 4-0. In the sideboard, there's Pyrite Spellbomb for the Sanctifier deck, a couple of Terminates. We have 2 Tourachs, which is a really good card against blue-white and Omnat decks. And yeah, not that many things. This list comes from Javier Dominguez. He won the Spanish Nationals, which is very similar to this list. He was playing, I think, 1 Mountain, or maybe not, but he definitely changed that, and now he doesn't play any Mountain. So yeah, the only basic land is a Swamp. The main reason is that drawing Mountain is really bad. That's, like, obviously you always love to have access to a basic land in your deck, but when you draw that basic Mountain, it's quite terrible in this deck. Alright, let's go to the flashbacks, to the replays. Okay, here it is. Okay, let's go. Alright, let's open this thing. And let's just click one at a time, I believe. Alright, so who was on the play? Me. And I opened this hand, which is a quite interesting hand because I don't have an early play, but I do have the option to go Spell Pierce on turn 1. My opponent also reveals Lurrus, so it's likely that they play either Springleaf Drum or Thoughtseize, so I'm just happy to keep my Spell Pierce up on turn 1 here. And yeah, let's go. Opponent plays Polluted Delta, so they are on Grixis Shadow. They start with Ragavan. They also mulligan to 5, that's very important to know, of course. They start with Ragavan, and I don't have an answer for it. I decide to fetch Thin in order to... yeah, because I have 2 shadows, so I want to fetch, of course. Okay, and now I play a Blood Crypt untapped. And what I decide to do is... first, I was going to play Kroxa, because I'm like, that's the only play I can do. But then I was like, I really don't want you to hit me with Ragavan, because you mulligan to 5, and one of the few ways is you just get card advantage with the Ragavan. So what I did instead was to cast Kroxa in my end step, so that it would carry over for my opponent's turn, and Ragavan wouldn't have an ability. Of course, it's super risky, because if they go Kroxa, it doesn't have the ability to just die. So... it's a very risky play, but I really don't want them to connect with Ragavan, so I'm taking the risk. And instead playing this dress down end of turn, so that this Ragavan now doesn't have an effect. Okay. Let's continue now. They play Scalding Tarn, they connect, they attack me. And by the way, this is a play that... it's not good, I think, in the mirror match. It's pretty clear that I play Grixis Shadow, because I play Grixis and I play dress down. And... against Shadow, you don't want to attack. Because them attacking me here is going to be huge. They deal me 2 damage. You don't want to attack in the mirror match of that Shadow. You don't want to let your opponent grow their shadows. Because now I get to play a 3/3 Death Shadow. And that's huge. It's blocked. Alright, looks like these... oh. Okay. Never mind. Sometimes I guess Magic Online gets blocked. But yeah, so what I did was I shot 3 damage, go to 10, cast 2 Shadow, leave up Spell Pierce. Okay, it resumed. I was pretty afraid because, again, I'm working on the flashback because I feel like a lot of important things happen. First thing important that happened, opponent attack. They shouldn't have done it. And now they just return Lurrus. So of course my opponent is now in a position of disadvantage. Again, they have mulliganed, so they pass the turn up to me. And I draw Drowning the Loch. But this turn is definitely a very, very important turn. So my opponent is on 14, and they had 4 cards in hand, and what they did was they returned Lurrus. So that means that my opponent had spells, but they just instead decided to return Lurrus, despite empty graveyard. It's very likely that they have some Grixis Shadow in hand. So as I mentioned earlier, you don't want to attack with Shadow. You only want to start attacking with Shadow when the Shadow is lethal. You want the opponent to take all the damage themselves, and then do the thing, okay? You want them to... Sorry. You want them to shock themselves so that the Shadow... You don't want to help them. Again, my opponent helped me here attacking. So, what I do this turn? This turn, what I do is... Kroxa, Drowning the Loch. My opponent... returned the Lurrus, meaning that next turn they probably go, I don't know, Bauble Lurrus, some sort of, some situations in which they use Lurrus. So while I could also return my Lurrus, I feel that I have enough lands that I can just afford to play Kroxa. Also want to keep up Spell Pierce in case they go Expressive Iteration. Let's see what they do here. Okay, so they discarded a card off of Kroxa. It was a second copy of Ragavan. And now they crack the Bauble, and they go Lurrus, which I have the mana for to counter with Drowning the Loch. And that's all good. So I'm gonna speed run it. They also play a Shadow. My opponent drew a land, so was able to damage themselves from 14 to 11, so the Shadow now is a 2/2. Whenever I click this button, it goes through the entirety of the turn. Whenever I click this button, it's just 1 click. Just making sure that you understand how it works. Alright, now what do I do? Once again, I could attack with my 6/6 Shadows, but if I do, this is an important rule that you might not be aware of. If you play Shadow, you are aware of, but this is not intuitive, so let me clear it for you. Let's say I attack with 2/6/6 Shadow. 2/6/6, it doesn't matter, they're Grixis Shadow. I attack with 2/6/6 to Colossal Dreadmaw, whatever. And they block just 1 Shadow on a 6/6, what happens? It's very weird. I'll explain it with, I guess, some screenshots so I can write on it. My opponent, so I attack with this 2 Shadow. 1 6/6 goes through, and my opponent life total becomes 5. That means that this 5 life total will turn the Shadow into an 8/8. And why do I think that the Shadow dies? Because it's blocking. It doesn't die. It becomes an 8/8 before it receives damage. But it only deals 2 damage in combat. So my Shadow doesn't die. It remains a 6/6 with 2 damage on it. Okay? Whereas their Shadow becomes an 8/8 with 6 damage on it. It isn't intuitive, but it is the way it works. Now, known that I can't afford to attack, because I can't afford their Shadow to be bigger than mine. Once again, I only want to send in attacks whenever Shadow is lethal. So what I do instead, I could either return Lurrus and play Channeler, but I really, really want to play Kroxa here, because flashing back Kroxa means that I am able to play around Drowning the Loch. So now my graveyard is empty. They can't Drowning the Loch me. I'm happy to just cast Kroxa here. They discarded a card. They discarded a land, so the Shadow becomes a 5/5. They're an 8. They're very close. My Shadow is very close to be lethal. Well, let's continue for now. Let's see what they do. They have 2 cards. They play a Thoughtseize, and now I have the option to Spell Pierce it, right? Because you're like, oh, they're probably going to take your Spell Pierce, so might as well counter it. No, because if you Spell Pierce this, they pay 2, and they discard a Channeler, so they get to 2 for 1 new. So just let them Thoughtseize you. Don't play a Spell Pierce here. And they also play Shadow. So they have no cards in hand with 2 7/7 Shadow because they just took 2 damage here. So my opponent is ahead on Shadow on me. Despite I never attacked, okay? So I never attacked this game, and this is what's happening. Whereas they did attack me. If I didn't attack me, this Shadow would have been 4/4. It's a huge difference, huge difference. Okay, so I drew Bauble. I can see what's their top, and their top is that Shadow. Okay? So I thought about a thing. I thought like, wait, I have lethal now because they have no cards in hand and their top is a Shadow. I could attack with Kroxa, send them to 3, they chump block, then I return Lurrus, they draw a Shadow, they attack with all, I block so I don't die, and only the Ragavan goes through. And next turn I can go Lurrus, Kroxa, and you die. There is a problem though, is that you don't know what Ragavan's gonna flip. Ragavan might flip a removal spell, and or I don't know, something, honestly, literally anything, like an iteration into counterspell, and then now you don't win anymore. So let's not go for that route, okay? So while you might think that, oh wait, I have lethal with 2 Kroxas, don't do that, because the Ragavan is in a question that you don't know exactly what's going to be. So you just bubble them, you see that they have a Shadow, and you return Lurrus. And once again, we can't afford to attack, because if we attack with Kroxa, they just chump block it, their Shadow becomes 10/10, and you don't know how it's gonna go. We actually have to be ready for a triple block now. Obviously, I was hoping to draw a removal spell, but that's fine. Now, they make, I think, another mistake, because the Shadow here is lethal, right? Because I'm on 7, so I have to block these. So the Ragavan attack was pretty free, because if they attack with all and I want to block the Ragavan, I have to block each, I have to do 2 chump block. Whereas now, I can afford to double block one of these Shadow and single block the other, because it's lethal, okay? So this is very important. As you see, my opponent is ahead of me, because they were able to damage themselves way more than I did in this game. Okay, so the combat happens. Yep, we move on. So they have a Ragavan and they have 2 Shadow now. But I have a Lurrus, so I would say that I'm still in a good shape. I draw a fetch land, that's perfect. Now, my Shadow is lethal. I mean, it was already lethal, but of course, if I didn't have a fetch land, I couldn't have attacked. So what I do instead here is I play Lurrus. I should have just gone fetch land attack first, because I don't want to give them informations, but okay. I play Ragavan. I play Shadow. I play fetch land. That's huge. Drawing fetch land here is really important. And now I'm able to attack, because this attack makes them chump block. Whereas if I didn't attack, nothing would change. They just don't attack, and like nothing matters. Whereas now I have the edge, because I make them chump block. They must block. As I said, this is my first ever attack in this game. The first ever attack in this game, it's a lethal attack. Very important. Now they draw a Bauble. They target me. I don't fetch. There's no rush to fetch. I don't care that they know the card that I have. But I might take a top land. I might take an untap land. Let's move on. So I draw a card that I know about. It's a Channeler. And I flashback Kroxa. Because if they have a land, I win the game. What happens? If I'm flashbacking Kroxa from the graveyard thanks to Lurrus. If they have a land, they go to 3 attack with all, I win. Okay? And the card they have is Kolaghan's Command, which I can Spell Pierce for the win. If I had played a Spell Pierce on the Thoughtses earlier, I wouldn't have the Spell Pierce for the win here. This is, again, huge. And now I win the game because Kroxa deals them 3, then he dies, and then I attack with all, they go block, take 5, and we win. So this is how the first game went. Of course, I'm going to put a mulligan to 5, but there was a lot of things. Like they had a Ragavan on turn 1. We didn't have a removal spell right away. We had to keep it in check. Their shadows, there are 3 shadows against our 2, and they were bigger than mine. But in the end, the Lurrus advantage was too big. So that's how the game 1 went. Let's see the second one. You can see now a little spoiler that I lost game number 2, but that's okay. Alright, let's see how I sideboarded. I cut 3 Drown in the Loch and 2 Dress Down. And I brought in 2 Nihil Spellbomb, 2 Fatal Push, and one Spell Pierce. I'm on the draw, so Spell Pierce is good. I mean, Spell Pierce is good in general. I don't like drawing the Loch because it's terrible against Nihil Spellbomb. Or in general, I'm not a big fan of this card. Costing 2 mana is a lot, and Dress Down, of course, it's not great in the mirror match because they also have shadows. It's not just you. All right, let's begin. I reveal my Lurrus, and I open this hand, which is, I mean, not a bad hand. And they go Channeler. That's fine. That gives me time. It's not Ragavan. I drew a Kroxa. Not great. You can definitely take these out on the draw, I think. You could just Terminate instead of Kroxa on the draw, honestly. Okay, and I decide here to play Inquisition instead of Channeler Bauble. The reason why I do that is because I really want my Channeler to survive a Unholy Heat not kicked. And yeah, I just want to Inquisition before they Inquisition me. What I mean is, it's very likely that if they have a discard spell and the Channeler, they lead on Channeler. So they might have a discard spell in hand. So I want to fire off my discard spell before they can discard it. And I want to catch Iteration or just, in general, like 2-for-1 cards. So yeah, you discard Iteration. Their hand is strong though, so it's going to be a tough game. They go Channeler, they fetch. And they play a dashed Ragavan. So they drew a dashed Ragavan. Normally, I don't like to dash Ragavan, but in this matchup, Ragavan is very, very strong because we both play so many 1-drop proactive, like 6 discard spell, 8 threats, and so on and so forth. 4 Bauble, of course. Thankfully, they hit a land, and they pass. Them attacking me makes me happy because they have the shadows. Okay, so here my goal now is to find an answer to Ragavan. I can't afford my opponent to hit me again with Ragavan because I only have a Channeler to play. I could fetch and play a 1/1 shadow. I could do that, but my opponent is attacking me, so I think I'd rather simply dig for a removal spell, because with Channeler and Fetch and Bauble, you can really dig a lot. So you go Channeler, Bauble, you bind that. Then I Bauble myself, looking for a removal spell. I don't find it, so I fetch, and they bolt in response. My fetch, so that I can spell pierce it. Smart. And now with fetch land, I think a lot about what to take. Because I might take a blue land. Remember, my removal spells are 6 are red, 2 are black. But I also have 4 Iteration, 2 Spell Pierce. Those are my only blue cards. So I decide to take Blood Crypt. And I draw an upkeep of Bauble, and I do draw an Unholy Heat. So our dig for 3 was very important because we did find the card that we wanted. So now if opponent dashes Ragavan, I have an answer for it. They instead decide to go Expressive Iteration, which is perfectly fine. They get Delirium by binding Kroxa, that's very relevant. And this is like the best thing for Kroxa, is when you just surveil it in graveyard. It's terrible when you draw like this. This basically is gonna be a mulligan to 5 for me, this whole game. So I decide here to Unholy Heat this Channeler, because my opponent does not dash Ragavan this turn, and I have mana this turn, and I might not have it next turn. I also have 2 shadows next turn to block the Ragavan. I decide to just take the Channeler down. I could have taken 3 and start casting this shadow. My opponent has a Drawn in the Loch for one of the shadow, and they also have a Kroxa coming down. They're definitely ahead. I feel like I need to tap my mana every turn here. I draw a Ragavan, and I decide to play that and a shadow. Putting into play... sorry, they don't have both anymore. Putting into play as many creatures as possible in order to trade with the Ragavan. I know they have another Ragavan in hand because this one came from the Expressive Iteration, so they still have a Ragavan in hand. I decide to trade with the Shadow because I don't have any shock land, so I prefer to have this as a threat. Because the Ragavan is a threat indeed. So they play their own Ragavan, and they think they kill my... yeah. Okay. And they kill my Ragavan. So they have 2 cards in hand, they have 1 card in hand. I draw Iteration, which is uncastable, and I play a 1/1 Shadow because I need to block their Ragavan. And obviously this game is slipping away from me. Now they go Lurrus. Oh, they go Lurrus from hand. And I assume they trade. Yes, because they can't afford me to draw land to grow the Shadow. Of course, in this matchup, having land drop is huge for Shadows. And I decide here to, again, not go for Kroxa because they have Lurrus plus Mystery card. So instead, I go for Iteration. Hoping to find a Discard spell. But instead, I find Iteration 2 lands, which is terrible because I already made a land drop this turn, so... My opponent goes fetch end of turn, plays Lurrus. Yeah, they play Lurrus, they flashback Ragavan, connect, they hit Iteration, and I concede. So what happened in this game was I think kept a fine hand. It wasn't amazing. It had 2 shadows. I didn't have enough lands, so my shadows never were really relevant in this game. And they drew 2 Kroxa, which were awful. So if I had to go back, I would, on the draw, take out the Kroxas for Terminate. And now let's get the last game. Okay, I'm on the play. And I reveal my companion. Of course, being on the play is huge in this matchup. No, I really need to repeat that because that's basically every matchup. But I open a very interesting hand. A hand that I wouldn't fold anybody from Mulligan in, especially in a deck with Lurrus of the Dream Den, double Steam Bends. Although I decided to keep. I decided to keep because I really dislike Mulligan in the Thoughteize matchup. And I feel like this hand is really just 1 black mana away from being excellent. I'm on the play. I decide to lead off on Dragon's Rage Channeler because I don't want them to kill my Ragavan. I want to have a protection with Spell Pierce for Ragavan. And I start with Dragon's Rage Channeler, as I said. And they go also Dragon's Rage Channeler. And I draw Unholy Heat. Perfect. Perfect. I could kill the Dragon's Rage Channeler, but I don't do it. You'd be like, why don't you do it, Mangu? I don't do it because I want them to block. Because this Channeler here is not good. Or like, it's not a very good threat, unlike Ragavan. And I want to use this Unholy Heat. So in this turn I want to play Ragavan with Spell Pierce up. And I want to use Unholy Heat to kill their threats if they want to play, if instead of a removal spell they play a creature that blocks. So let's say next turn they go land, Fatal Push, Spell Pierce, Dragon's Rage Channeler or Ragavan, then I can Unholy Heat that and connect with my Ragavan. So it's really important that you don't Unholy Heat this. So many small plays, but I think they all add up. So I play my Steam Vents, play my Ragavan, and pass with Spell Pierce up. Again, all of these things matter. Thankfully, my opponent doesn't have any cheap answer to my Ragavan. Instead, they have Drown in the Loch. They decide to wait until combat phase so that I can't dash a new Ragavan. This makes sense. And I play a Force Spell Pierce. Okay, and now Ragavan connects, and we hit a Fatal Push, so nothing. And now what do? Do I want to play a Thoughtseize? Do I want to leave a Fatal Push? I think it's good that I play a Thoughtseize here. I want to just see their hand. They probably have another Drown in the Loch, I thought, so I want to discard it. Instead, they have Kolaghan's Command, Channeler, 2 lands. Perfect. Keeping the Unholy Heat was very good. So yeah, I'm going to discard the Kolaghan's Command, and their hand is not great. I still don't have black mana, though. My hand is performing, though, despite that. So my play of, you know, keeping that hand is definitely playing out, since I was able to play Magic despite not having a black mana. I Unholy Heat end of turn, draw. I draw Lightning Bolt. It's not a black land, but still lets me connect with Ragavan once again. Let's go. And now, like, literally every hand is black land, because I play 19 lands, 2 Steam Bends. I exile the Blood Crypt, Bloodstained Mire, and pass. Can't do anything. I have to pass here. They have 1 card in hand, and it's a land. I know it because I thought since them last turn. So I'm assuming now they take back Lurrus. And I am able now to connect once again with Ragavan. I draw land. Very good. I connect with Ragavan. Let's see what I find. I find Lightning Bolt. Now it's very important. Because what do? Do I bolt there? Do I bolt me? Okay. I want to kill Lurrus with Fatal Push next turn. It has to happen. They can only bring back a Channeler now. So I decide to not cast this bolt because I don't want to bolt you. I don't want to make your shadow grow. I have to attack you. I said you don't have to attack in the mirror, but Ragavan is obviously the exception to the rule because I need to attack if I want to get the value of treasure and cards. So Ragavan is the only card that has to attack in the mirror. Of course, Channeler must, but yeah. Alright, so I fetch for a Tri-land, finally have a for a Shockland, I finally have the mana, and I return Lurrus. And I decide not to play Shadow, because playing Shadow as a 2-2 is just bad in my opinion. It dies to Bolt, Unholy Heat, Kolaghan's Command. I can just chill here. I don't have any rush to play a Shadow 2-2. And I don't play this Bolt because I, as I said, don't want to spend the black mana because I need to cast Lurrus next turn, and if I play Fatal Push, I can't cast Lurrus if I use this Bolt or this Shadow. This is another reason why I'm not casting Shadow. If I cast Shadow, I have to use a treasure. And then if I play Push, I have to use a treasure. And then I can't cast Lurrus. So I have to preserve my black mana here. Remember, Push kills Lurrus off of a treasure because you activate Revolt that way. Okay, so they go another land, untapped. To play Lurrus. Resolves. And they play Channeler, and I kill the Lurrus with my treasure. And they play Nihil Spellbomb, that's huge. They have no cards in end. And they pass. I draw Expressive Iteration. Now, if I play Lurrus, they crack the Bauble in response. And my Lurrus doesn't do much, and I can't play Shadow, because this requires 3 black. So let's just start with Iteration to find Removal Spell, to keep on connecting a Ragavan, to find lands, and blah blah blah. Alright, I don't find any of those. I find a Spell Pierce, which is dead at this point, because they have infinite lands and no cards in end. So I just have to take these two. Not a great choice, but that's what it is. Still no lands for me. I get Bomb, and I decide to crack the Bomb. Oh, sorry, first I attack. Why? They could crack the Bomb and get to the Delirium, right? And block. But I can also bomb them to lose the Delirium and trade. Also, I can draw a card off my bomb, cracking the treasure, whereas they can't draw a card with their bomb. So I really love if they crack the bomb now. That's why I attack. Plus, I have, I'm ahead. I have 3 cards in end. I don't mind trading. I don't want them to draw removal spells on my thing and attack me. Or rather, I do because I have Shadow, but I'm gonna... I decide to crack Shadow now, Bauble now, because I want to draw land here. Unfortunately, I draw Swamp, not a fetch land, so my life total is still very high. But that's okay. It has to happen. I have to play the Shadow here. Okay, they play Bauble. They Bauble me, and they crack the bomb. Draw a card. Off of the bomb, they draw an Explosives for 1. So, they can't kill my Shadow. You know what I draw here. And I draw a Ragavan. So now, obviously I can't dash Ragavan because they attack me with, they have the Explosives. But the question is, do I want to attack with Shadow? I told you earlier the rule was to only attack with Ragavan and not attack with Shadow unless it was a lethal Shadow. But this is a weird game. My opponent's in top deck mode, plus if they play a Shadow now, it's already huge. It's already a 7-7 that they cannot overcome. So I do have to attack here because I have to get them there. They have Kolaghan's Command. Okay? So I attack here and pass. They have 1 card in hand. If they crack Explosives on the turn, I want to return Shadow and make them discard a card. They decide not to crack Explosives. And they have 1 card in hand. I think that I want to make them discard that card and deal them 2 damage with my Kolaghan's Command to reduce the odds of drawing like a Spell Pierce or something. Of course, now it could be turned against me because they might draw a dash Ragavan. I decide to do that. So I deal them 2 damage, so they're now dead to both of my threats here. As well as, of course, my 4 copies of Lightning Bolt, which I do play and other people don't. They drew Iteration, very good. They exile Watery Grave, that's not very good. And they pass with 1 card in hand. And I draw, it's a Bolt. They're 2 life. And now the game ends because they go to combat, they crack the explosives, and I bolt them and win. So again, at least with 4 Lightning Bolt was really nice in many matchups, as well as in the mirror. I play often some games against maybe Control that get rid of all your creatures, and then you just have Bolt because you finish them off that way. So there's always ups and downs in playing Unholy Heat and Push, but I really like the versions with Bolt. But again, the mirror match, I mean, obviously now I was able to do this analysis because I already played the game like an hour ago. So I went to all of this like thoughts with the person I was doing coaching with, but mostly like the lesson, the basic lesson of this was, in the Shadow Mirror, you don't want to attack. Only exception is Ragavan, because of the value of Ragavan. Don't attack with small shadow. You might make them play huge shadows. And the synergy, the interaction with shadow is complicated, so also be aware of that. But yeah, this was only like an half an hour video of only 1 match, but I think it was important. And again, if you have any questions about certain things, I'm always in the comments. I am paying a lot of attention to YouTube channel. I want my YouTube channel to grow a lot. I am receiving a lot of love recently with, the turn 1 kill clip got over 100,000 views. It makes me very happy. So yeah, I'll be definitely dedicating more and more focus on the YouTube channel. And thank you all everybody for watching. And remind that if you enjoyed what you saw, press like, subscribe, write a comment, the usuals, that always helps. And have a good day.